Hi, Farah.
Hey mate, you alright?
Yeah, good, thanks. Just, yeah, some boomer tech problems, shall we say.
It's no worries at all. It's always difficult the first time.
Yeah, what
Cool.
did you think of the report?
Yeah, no, really interesting. I don't know how you want to kind of chat through, like, 'cause do you want to do a little bit of an introduction to what you're thinking about today and introduce everyone to the idea, and then we can kind of maybe chatting through stuff.
Yeah, sure. I had a little bit I wanted to speak on just before we went on to the report, just to give it a bit of context, maybe, or like why I think it's important, doing a stream on it and that.
Great, we'll go for it because you are live right now.
Oh, right, shit. So yeah, why do I want to do a stream on this report, Living with Beauty by Roger Scruton and the Beautiful Building Better Commission. So basically, I mean, there was I think there's a quote by G.K. Chesterton about what is good. Just try and find it now. Anyway, that's not too important, I guess. Come back to that maybe. But it's basically like our avoidance nowadays of discussing, what is good. We sort of like dodge around that issue. So basically, I believe good architecture improves quality of life, and also that the architecture of England's towns, villages, and cities is up there with its finest civilizational achievements. In short, good architecture contributes to the good life. And then I've got to illustrate why I think this report is important as well. Another quote, this time from Scruton on beauty. There is, he goes, there is a deep human need for beauty, and if you ignore that need in architecture, your buildings will not last. I recommend that people listening to this watch Scruton's Why Beauty Matters documentary from 2009, which I will leave a link to in the description below. I've been meaning to watch it for a long time, but only got around to watching it about a week and a half ago. I may be suffering from recency bias, but I think it's one of the best things the BBC has ever put out. I think it's up there with the best episodes of Kenneth Clarke's Civilization series. Tim Dowling reviewed Scruton's documentary in The Guardian and wrote the following: Scruton's preface of the history of theories about beauty from Plato to Kant only served to soften his case. There's a reason people don't think of the world as intrinsically meaningful anymore, because it isn't. This is a view which I wholeheartedly disagree with. This view will lead us on the road to nihilism, and I believe this view of the world will lead us towards pain, suffering, and mental anguish. Interestingly, Tim Dowling is a Gen Xer as well. And then also, I just wanted to another Scruton quote about how he witnessed the 1968 student protests in Paris and wrote the following about it. I suddenly realised I was on the other side. What I saw was an unruly mob of self-indulgent middle-class hooligans. When I asked my friends what they wanted, what they were trying to achieve, all I got back was this ludicrous Marxist gobbledygook. I was disgusted by it and thought there must be a way back to the defence of Western civilization against these things. That's when I became a conservative. I knew I wanted to conserve things rather than pull them down. The last part of this quote is particularly relevant to our discussion because there are people who look at the state of our modern towns and cities and say to themselves, I want to conserve the beauty of this town or city. I don't want new building developments to destroy the beauty of this town or city. It's not just Marxism that has destroyed towns and cities, but managerial technocratic capitalism as well. So
that's definitely interesting. Like maybe just to step back a second and give the kind of listeners a bit of background for those who don't know who Roger Scruton is. You know, how would you describe kind of Scruton's background? A second.
It's a bit of a polymath, to be honest. I'd say it was an English conservative philosopher who specialised in political philosophy and the philosophy of aesthetics concerning like art and architecture and music as well.
Yeah.
He wrote widely, didn't he? Like I think he wrote like 50 books.
Yeah, on loads of topics, and like you said, I would describe him as like an aesthetic philosopher. So the kind of one of the traditional fields of philosophy is this idea of looking into aesthetics. What is beauty? What is the beautiful? And he kind of realized that there was a need to kind of bring this back. Now, just a few things that you've already mentioned as well, like just in terms of his background, I would describe Scruton as having this kind of like, I guess, kind of Kantian foundation. This is where it gets a little bit heavy, like because aesthetics is a kind of philosophy. All of those ideas are typically rooted in a certain type of philosophy at the same time. So, it's the kind of guys who are asking, what is beauty, what is the beautiful, and like I said, Scruton really honed in and focused in on Kant as kind of like his main starting point. And then I guess the other thing that's pertinent to mention is, like you said, he became a conservative. I'd say relatively late in his life, but then was involved in some pretty high profile positions, helping out the government with he had like a governmental position, but unfortunately due to the scurrilous behaviour of a
is it George Eaton from the New Statesman?
New Statesman, yeah. He basically got him fired, and soon after that, Scruton died. So, I guess kind of like to kind of set the scene a little bit, Scruton is this kind of everyone else was not thinking about this kind of stuff, and he was the kind of sole voice for a long time, thinking about beauty and aesthetics in a time like at the kind of peak of postmodernism.
Yeah,
I was just going to bring up a little picture of him. I'm just going to share my screen. You should be able to put that on the stream if you check there.
Right. So how do I do that? Just add to the stream.
Yeah, there you go. So there you go. There's a nice little picture of Scruton there, and in many ways he's like ahead of his time, and
he's a proper conservative, isn't he? Rather than say a libertarian, although he leans towards a free market, he believes in, I guess, conserving beauty would be one of the things he believes in. Conserving the beauty and heritage of our towns and cities, and he'd also believe in, say, providing social services such as the NHS or schools or housing, for instance. But he leaned towards the free market end, because the way he saw it is, to quote him in an interview we did with Russia Today, he said, basically, you don't have any economy if you don't have any sort of free market, system.
Yes, I mean, the whole kind of free market versus kind of like mercantilist question, it is maybe for another time. But again,
I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get into that on the stream.
But again, like you said, he was kind of like fiscally liberal, socially conservative, but also like we said, just kind of like talking about beauty before anyone else was. And I guess kind of one of his famous books is literally Scruton on beauty. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to read that or listen to that.
No, I'm going to. Yeah, it's I think it's on Audible. It's like 5 hours of like listen.
Yeah, it's really short. Definitely worth a listen. So again, he's literally written books on beauty and trying to basically rehash Kantian thoughts on beauty, and then maybe just to kind of set the scene a little bit in terms of like modern philosophies on beauty. Since the 20s, there has been an active attack on creating beautiful things. Like famously, Adorno said that beauty is dead. There's no need for beauty. And I guess by the time that Scruton's around, there is this kind of subjectivist notions of beauty, where again it's just like beauty is whatever you want it to be, and what I think's beautiful is different to what you think's beautiful. And
I mean, it culminates in we're trying to promote. Well, some people in certain quarters are trying to promote, say, body positivity or body, size. I don't know how to be kind about this, but like plus size models, or trying to make that a healthy, and that sort of comes from that line of thinking, I believe, as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think Owen's just joined as well. Hey, mate.
Hello, how are we doing? You right?
Yes, good. Thank you.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, good. Oh, fantastic. Right, yeah. So it's so we're talking about Scruton. What are we going through now, right? Scruton's kind of philosophy, is it?
Yeah, just a little bit of a background, and then also because this is we're going to be going through the report in a second. And I just wanted to give a little bit of background as to
who Scruton was.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
So from what I've read, I've watched a couple. I've watched quite a few lectures on from Scruton, especially when I was in uni. I was kind of an undercover Scruton guy in uni, even though he was getting chastised constantly.
Was he? When he did your architecture degree, was he getting?
Oh yeah, we're going back. Well, so if we go back to maybe second and third year, when I was probably pushing him the most.
Yeah.
And fourth year, in my final project, I was as well. I never referenced him because I wasn't allowed. I basically weren't allowed to.
Oh,
They knew I was I like traditional buildings, and they knew history was my thing.
Yeah.
And so they knew that I liked Scruton. I think they assumed I liked Scruton, which is fine by me. But he was vilified in some corners. He was also
chased out of academia, wasn't he, as well? In like the 80s.
To be fair to my lecturers, right? They didn't. Some lecturers did vilify him, right? Some lecturers did, but some lecturers did have sympathy, I think, with certain aspects of it. But then some of the lecturers, then you have the postmodern lectures. It's really weird. You have the quarters. They would.
Luckily, I never had a postmodern lecturer. Luckily.
No. Which school did you go to?
I'd rather not say, but
okay.
Yeah, it was modernist lecturers, but they were very much like they had like more of a contextualist approach. They had like a conceptual approach to architecture as well.
A big thing when I was leaving, which I think was a step in the right direction, was this idea of regionalism.
Yeah.
So architecture.
They had that. Most matures had that sort of thinking about architecture. Yeah.
What's happening in architecture right now is something I think Scruton's had a kind of under like underlying influence here that a lot of modern architects haven't realized in terms of they attribute it to a different guy, a guy called he's a Russian guy, but they attribute it to him. I can't remember now. If I find my old essay on it, I'll let you guys know. He developed this thing called it's towards a critical regionalism or something like that. It's like towards a architectural regionalism. So it's based on vernacular design.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the philosophy that comes through that is Scruton, actually. But it's the idea is to start designing in context, like you said, contextual design, and designing with traditional materials and with traditional building methods. But the thing is, a lot of architects will then complain about pastiche, and they complain about Scruton by using that. That's the big complaint about Scruton, is that he's described as pastiche. He wants pastiche things, even though that's what they're doing. But yeah, but Scruton, if we then now take back and talk about the Scruton's kind of philosophy towards things, I think he took a very Aristotelian approach to design. If we go looking at architectural design, it's very Platonic. The mainstream architecture. It's very, it's not got. It's just highly utilitarian. Right now, currently, it's moving away from it slowly. Aesthetic is coming back into architecture slowly, but the architects won't be aesthetic; they'll be utilitarian. So there is that, and Scruton himself, though, was kind of I would say he's almost a bit of a Renaissance man for this age. He was on a last of a breed, because he spoke about everything from political theory to wines. He did everything.
Well, again, I think, from my perspective, that is the place that any aspiring, innovative architect or creative should be. I think we're stuck in this modern idea of the architect or the artist as someone who's they've got a degree and they're a product of a system or a product of specific learning. While, again, if you go back to the Renaissance times or some of the, even earlier guys in the guild system, they are a product of being. It's from doing stuff and from living life and learning about wines. Maybe that had no impact on his understanding at all, but the senses are connected. And I think if you can hone your sense of smell or taste, it's going to affect your sight or whatever at the same time. So, I think we need more. We need to be more like him, where we're kind of, these kind of Renaissance men style characters.
Oh yeah, well, certainly he's a big inspiration to me. It's a lot the kind of why I kind of want to be. I've always wanted to be a bit of a Renaissance man either way, but Scruton is definitely an influence upon me in that respect. So it's why like I have my interest in politics. Even though I'm an architect, I have my love of history, and I also then try to write, even though I'm a terrible dyslexic. So you never want to read anything I try and write. But there is that dying breed, and I think there is something great to aspire to there. And I think, like, if we just talk about recent events, you think about Prince Philip, and he is kind of a bit of
same kind
of breed.
Yeah. You're right.
And it's something the Gen X's certainly don't have. Is this kind of character? I guess.
It's not encouraged that way, to put everything in its own little boxes rather than take like a multidisciplinary.
They have less of, I should say, because Neil Oliver, I would say, is loosely in the mold, even though he's a historian. I think he loosely has the mold of someone definitely who's kind of a bit more than what his speciality is. I see what I hate about the modern world. I think one of the great things about Scruton, and again, when we said Prince Philip there, and to some extent Charles as well, to be fair to Charles, is that they are the generalists. We live in a world where everyone's got to be a specialist in a topic, and in many ways they're not, because they're shit at their topics. But in a way, Scruton, Philip, and I said Charles, they knew a lot about everything, and they would know how to connect them all. There's something to say to that, and I think there's something that people don't understand about.
I think there's something. The decline in the education system is apparent to a lot of people. Just to think, just want to briefly mention, like AA trying to bring back like the
trivium
and the quadrivium. Do you know what I mean? You listen to people members listen to like MPs nowadays, and you go back,
because they're specialists. Number one, if I was in charge of the country, that no politician who's done no person who's done a politics degree should be allowed to be an MP. That's my number one. I think you should have been in work for at least 10 years before you can become an MP.
Yeah.
This is why I want to be an MP.
Oh yeah, you get rid of that most definitely. The what's it? The
career politician.
Yeah, it's that degree in it from like Oxford and Cambridge. The politics philosophy. Yeah, PPE degree. They just seem to get that degree and then they come out and they go straight into working for government.
So my talent has always been like my talking and my kind of I've always been a bit of a politician since I was small, and people have always tried to push me. I'll go into politics, and I'm just like, no, I don't want to do it because I want to learn to live first before I do it. Otherwise, I won't know what to do. I can't because then I'll become a stooge. I'll be whipped.
Yeah,
and you don't want that, and I think that's what these people are. I think the word I'm looking for to describe these people is they're universal. They have a universal understanding, and they have an understanding of how things connect in that manner of a kind of Aristotle sort of way.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the great things about architecture in itself is
it's truly the topic. Yeah, it's truly the topic that encompasses everything. Because this is what I found. I didn't. Going into architecture, I didn't know this as such, but then you soon learn because you have lectures on biology, you have lectures on physics, math, history, geography. I've had lectures on philosophy, politics, current affairs, economics. I've had lectures in economics. You get lectures about every single topic because everything ties into architecture, and it's quite something. I've had but then you do also get you have your 5-hour lectures on bricks and how bricks are made.
What are they called? I forgot what they're called.
Where you frog a brick. Yeah.
No, I mean we used to have like every week there used to be some sort of like salesman who'd come round and. He tried to like sell his product. It's something about continued professional development or something like that.
Oh, we had your sales and stuff. We used to have guest lectures. They called them stock lectures when I was in uni because I was in Bristol, so UE. So that's what we had there. And we had our technical design studio, which had a lot of that stuff. Then we had which was really a good studio. A good thing we used to do was there was one called. It was basically cross-practice stuff. You worked with, so I did architecture and planning. You worked with people who did other courses in the kind of building sphere. So you worked with real estate. You worked with planners, even though that was technically me. You worked with quantity surveyors. Interesting bunch. Quantity surveyors. Extremely analytical. And you worked with all that sort of kind, and it was very good because you quickly learn what your strengths are, and you quickly getting an understanding of things far out of the scope of simple building design.
Is that profession being sort of pushed out now? Was it quantity surveying due to technology, or is that still...
No, not at all. Dude, costings is for certain buildings is beyond. To cost a building is actually quite difficult, even for an architect, because an architect won't tell you. An architect these days, and even me as well, I will tell you. Someone tells me, "How are we going to build this?" You just say,
architects don't know how to build a house.
No, they don't. They'll say, "Go to structural engineer."
And they certainly don't. They certainly don't know how much a brick costs. So
no, I meant. I just meant like, is the profession being like pushed out by technology, or I just wondered if due to like I don't know BIM or other like
BIM you're on about, aren't you? You're on about like is because the standardization. It should be easy to cost up a building now, and you wouldn't need a quantity surveyor to do that job necessarily, but you really do. Because you have so many different kinds of things. Like you'll have someone with a particular kind of installation, and often architects, as you probably know, it's that they often forget about the budget.
Yeah.
Because an architect gets quite as anyone who's worked with an architect before knows, they are the ego. Yeah, the ego of the project.
Never.
So like,
That's very humble of you to say that about yourself there.
No, it's true though. Well, myself, I have the fortune of being able to have, I've straddled two disciplines. I'm a planner and architect, and I always said I was a planner doing architecture, and it turned out that I was better at architecture than planning. But even though I'm fine with it, and I'm a planner who hates cities, you know. So I hate modern cities, I should say. I hate contemporary. I hate contemporary urban design. I hate contemporary planning. I think it's terrible. But that's a topic for a different stream.
Well, maybe that's a good segue back into Scruton in a second, because like obviously I think one of the kind of things we wanted to look through today on the stream was this report that he worked on. So while he had tied himself to the Conservative Party, he produced the Living with Beauty report. And I thought there's some interesting pages on there. I thought it could be good for us to maybe just use that as a guide and just have a look through what they're saying. And
can I just sort of just want to like give a basic. I want to show something like I think gives like a basic summary of what like the report is against.
Go for it.
Yeah, go on.
Right. So how do I do this? Is it?
So you're trying to share your screen, yeah?
Yeah.
So yeah, you just there's a share button next to at the bottom there, next to Cam and Mike.
Yeah.
And
Share.
you just share screen, yeah. And it'll tell you which screen. If you have two screens, I'll tell you which screen you want to share or whatever.
Right.
Then that will add it to the stream.
Share screen, is it? Wait.
What? If you want to send it to me, I can share it. You can just add it to the stream. I don't mind.
Right. 1 sec. Share audio. Share.
You know what's interesting, right? I see at the beginning of the report. This it has the there's that interesting brick, right? I think it's glass brick, is it? It's really interesting.
It's glazed. Now
Yeah.
it's a definite trend. That is, I mean, hopefully we'll be talking about it on Foundations because there's a really interesting history of it. But it basically becomes big in the late 1880s. So, for example, the Reform Club, and like Victorian glazed brick. I mean, the classic example is the tube stations in Brown, in London. Have you ever seen the Victorian tube stations?
Yeah. So you're sharing now, by the way.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
I've seen these tube stations have some great design, man. That's a show we could do.
But but interestingly, it's a definite trend that's happening again now. There's a building I saw just off Carnaby Street that was in that kind of blue glazed brick, which is lovely. But that specific type of brick is very much from the Latvian Art Nouveau style. That's the hipsterest thing I've said all week. But yeah, check out Latvian Eisenstein, and you can see that. But yeah.
Wonderful, yeah. Right.
So I just wanted to show like Kingston upon Hull map, like the map of the old town, which is where I'm from. Map, right.
So
this really illustrates like the right, yeah. So basically, like this is a map, I think, from
it's just cut on the image, yeah. There.
From I think roughly 1640 or something like that. So you can see like the settlement of the town and how important like the river is to the town. And you can see like the shape of the town walls here.
Yeah.
This is another image of it from
That's good of it. That's a good map actually for the period.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it?
It's good. It's a good projection.
I like the hull with the V.
Yeah, I see. I
Vol.
return to using V's as U's.
Just want to show because they put like a road right through this, like a dual carriageway, right through like the old. I'm not joking, right? And
well, yeah. Well, this is okay. I can also show you something, right? Yeah. Okay, when we talk about the car, right, and how much it just the 1950s and 60s in general. This is what Scruton was reacting to, I think, was the most destructive decade architecturally there has ever been.
Oh God, yeah.
It destroyed so many towns were wiped out more or less to build motorways, and people have become obsessed with the car, and to the point where we are now living in the kind of shadow of that. We're still living in that legacy where our train network, which was the most comprehensive in the world, got cut in half and ruined overnight by a guy called Mr. Beeching, who was awful, and I hate him.
Isn't he Welsh?
He probably was. I don't give a damn. He's an idiot. He deserves. Look, day one, Owain would be trains. I want every town connected by a train. I love trains, by the way.
Yeah, they are brilliant.
It's just something.
Flying Scotsman.
There's something so distinctly British, and there's something so. I think I hate diesel trains, but there's something so beautiful about and something so quintessential about a proper steam engine. But that's a different thing, and
So can you see the old town here?
I can see it.
You can see like the outline of the old town here, and then you can see. So when the Industrial Revolution came about, and they built the docks just outside the city here. But then I think it was in the late 70s and early 80s, they decided to like destroy the old town by building this massive dual carriageway through the heart of the old town. So I mean that's just destroying your heritage.
Yeah, it's doubly damaging because obviously you've removed buildings to make that dual carriageway, number one. Number two, the noise pollution for the area has now massively increased. So the kind of the 3 blocks or whatever around it are now totally unusable for normal tasks.
Yeah.
And then number 3, you've just changed the dynamic and flow. I mean, you're sort of like this. You've chopped like half
off that part of the town, the marina here.
Yeah. You'll
like the marina is like in many towns and cities, it's like the most beautiful part of the city, or one of the most beautiful parts of the city, or the most serene parts. And you've
cut it off from it off.
Yeah.
It happened. Swansea's the same. That happened there. Like I showed previously, what happened in Bristol with the Georgian Square. That is a quintessence. That is one of the worst decisions in planning events.
That was pretty bad. It's interesting. Again, that is another interesting, like specific topic to look at with the car and its impact because it's just so negative, man.
It is. And carry on, Ludwig. While I do this.
So they built just around here. There was they've got like a whole venue which is like an entertainment or like performance venue, for like bands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, but there used to be like there used to be like some old warehouse buildings around here as well, that you could have converted into, I don't know, restaurants or flats or any other number of buildings. Yeah. And that's something the report touches upon, and it is the most sustainable thing you can do really is renovate your old buildings pretty much.
Okay, can I share this report again because I do want us to see it, check it out a little bit before.
Yeah, sure. Just one more thing. I just wanted to show this.
Okay, yeah.
Printers Street in Hull. So when we're talking about like placemaking, we're talking about things such as this. You see like the church towers. Just.
Yeah, the picturesque.
The picturesque. This is something that say Gordon Cullen wrote a whole book on, basically. The townscape, and the art of placemaking, basically. And funnily enough, that is just around here as well. In the old town, it's just
that's funny. So yeah, one street away from this. Is that like a big mall on the left hand side as well, or is that all part of
that was part of the I guess, when the era of like deindustrialization came about in the West, and they were building, all like the old industries like were shutting down, the shipping and that, and they thought, well, we need jobs in the area, so we'll build this massive shopping mall.
Temple to consumerism there instead. It's okay. Yeah, no, that's very depressing. Okay, that's really useful. Can we just have a quick look at this report then?
Yeah, sure. Like, one sec. Just want to show. So this is like the A62, and they built it basically to, connect to Leeds basically quicker, and then basically so you can get your goods and your services to get them about quicker, and then you just go down here, down there. Where is it? Vintage Street.
Right.
I like these old dock buildings. You can see this. You can see the kind of warehouses used to store goods and stuff.
So beautiful, aren't they? So basically, it's just here. You know what I mean? It's just like 5 minutes away. Well, not even funny, It's a minute away. And you got this beautiful, serene, picturesque piece of placemaking.
Yes, yeah. The word placemaking, I think that's a good one. Anyway, so I think before you go to we go back to the probe very quickly. I just want to show you the extent this goes to. So if you can add my screen,
how do I do
that? You click on my screen. So if you go down to the bottom bar, it'll show. It'll show
layout. Is it or
no? So just go down. It'll say I'm sharing my screen. If you just click on it, it should come up on the stream. It'll add it to the stream, like how you added me to the stream.
Yeah. Right. I can't see it. No, it's. There we go. Yeah. Sorry, being a bit retarded there. Jesus.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So this is a map of my town from 1898. I want to draw your attention to this quarter down here, this area which was known as Quay Street, and this area was kind of the port area, because this is obviously where the quay was, and all this, particularly all these homes here, down here as well. This was an old Georgian street. Georgian homes lined this entire street. This was this was a lot where the portmen were and stuff. And I'm going to take you now to a modern map of the town, and just see how much of it is gone, just to build this dual carriageway and this roundabout.
That's the key there.
It's an entire quarter. There's an entire quarter of the town has been destroyed for it.
It's interesting. It's very similar in terms of like they did it right by the riverfront as well. Because again, like why are you doing that? That's one of the best parts of a town is the kind of marina and the connection with the river. And again, like all of the old dock, maybe that's it. It's just all the old dock buildings and stuff. But
well, this used to be the main road west into West Wales. So this used to be this one key road here, and it used to flood, and it used to be a nightmare. But I don't understand why they didn't build it across the river. I know this is a floodplain, but they could have built an overpass across here at the time when they built this. So it made no sense to why they did it this way. And it was just and this is all modern buildings. This is a dire brick building. You can't. For some reason the map's gone now. But these used to be all old homes, and so if my images will load. Let's just open it in Paint. It's quicker. And so all this is gone. All this down here is gone. All this up here is gone. Very, very, very little of this remains. But you still got the Guildhall there. Even this is gone. That's the old jail. but the density is gone. You know, it used to be so dense, and I imagine
it's kind of like taking the heart out of a city, isn't it? A town, isn't it? Really, and what you're like replacing it with just like low tier consumerist buildings that themselves, I feel like I'm increasingly thinking that architecture from the 60s onwards has these ideas of like built-in redundancy. So again, like the creation
it's all part of the. Sorry for it. I just want to say it's all part of like the post 1945 era in it that we're living in. It's
I think it's all kind of like basically, you know, the big building companies, the big building grift. You know, what they want to do is to basically keep doing these huge projects, which gives them millions of pounds. They'll put a big fat mall in the centre of town, and then basically that never gets used, and then that will eventually get rebuilt and turned into something else.
You have that, and compare it with how it was.
Yeah, I mean that's just obviously
it's night and day. You know that you can see the teapot there. That's still there, by the way. But like, see what the car does to the space. It completely transforms it.
There are some places I've been to
what is
Utrecht.
this building? Yeah, sorry.
In Utrecht, they make it really hard for cars to get into the centre of town, so it is possible.
So,
but look, it's a mindset issue as well, isn't it? Where planners they're thinking just pure utility. You know, when you build a dual carriageway through a town, it's basically like screw tradition and heritage and what building means to people and how a city and town has come about, and let's just put something that's going to make our lives 5% faster.
You can get your iPhone like 5 minutes quicker.
Exactly. That is literally it. Like, how can we go to Leeds to get more consumer goods faster?
Interestingly, the Germans have come up with a solution in certain historic towns. Is that they don't allow cars in there, and they have massive car parks on the edge of town instead.
Yeah,
and which then you'll be able which will have bikes you can rent and stuff, whatever, to get around.
The kind of park and ride stuff, like Oxford has that as well.
Quite frankly, I think that's what Bath should have as well. I think Bath should ban all cars from the centre.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I'm as a man, again, petrol head. I think as a petrol head, I think the car is resigned to the countryside, not the urban. It should be anyway.
Yeah,
I think that works a lot. I think in a lot of places it seems to work where you sort of you're not encouraged to use the car in the city centre, or it's banned from the city centre, or you're encouraged to use like the tram or.
The tram's gone. The trams used to be everywhere. Another thing in the UK we destroyed was trams. We had loads of them, and they're all gone, more or less. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it could do with a rebirth for them. I mean, I think they've got them in like Manchester and Sheffield. I'm not sure where else, but
Bristol was going to have them, but then they decided just to have an updated bus network. So should we get to the report?
Yeah, I think that gives a good background to sort of the report, really, or what the report's trying to get at, basically.
Mm-hmm. Let me just share it again now. Hold on. I mentioned about that building with the glazed bricks. They have got a full picture of it, and it is the one just off Carnaby Street. I used to work opposite this building, and I saw it being made. But no, I do genuinely like it as a style. Like, I'm going to go straight to it. As like for a modernist building, it's actually okay. It's not too bad. There's kind of like a few little Art Deco features inside there in the steel work. So it is interesting, like you mentioned, around aesthetics coming back, but it's still everyone sort of slaves to material still. I just feel like because they're kind of stuck in the kind of steel mindset. They're always going to be,
steel is going to be the only way you can do these things. You can't. No one. There's a problem as well.
No.
I think Scruton.
Sorry. There you go. You go first.
I was going to say what Scruton alludes to a lot is that no one understands traditional craft anymore. No one knows how to build with certain materials anymore, such as with brick and stone. There aren't really any masons anymore.
Yeah.
That is one of the problems in it with contemporary architecture and contemporary architectural education is the divorce of architecture from craft and the increasing you sort of what is that, like hyper visualization, I guess, of what you see nowadays with a lot of renders, or it's all you're not like as you say, like back in the day, say in like medieval times, like it'd be like the master stonemason. They'd have an intimate knowledge of the craft.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like one thing I would say, Owen, is you can do this in brick very easily. This is this is the ground floor here. 1, 2, 3, like four-story buildings.
Yeah.
It's just that steel is the default. You see it around. Like I live in London, so there's a lot of like new builds or people trying to build in very weird spaces, and they're all steel frames, totally unnecessarily, because that's just like the default architecture mindset. Oh, we use steel frame for it. And the thing is, the consequences of those initial choices then impacts the beauty down the line. And again, people haven't realised that. But you're right that, and again, knowledge and skill has been lost essentially, and that's caused that. But again, that's maybe for another time. But what I thought we could have a quick look through is the R proposals, and I quite like these, and I thought it was quite interesting and worth chatting about. So I'll just paraphrase the top part, basically. So as part of the report, they're kind of laying out this idea for living with beauty, and their 3 proposals are to ask for beauty. Beauty includes everything that promotes a healthy and happy life, everything that makes a collection of buildings into a place, everything that turns everywhere into somewhere and nowhere into home. It is not merely a visual characteristic, but is revealed in the deep harmony between a place and those who settle here. So understood, beauty should be an essential condition for planning permission. So again, there's a couple of interesting things here. Firstly, it's a rejection of a materialistic view of beauty. So again, part of like if you look at modernist thinking in the 1910s, there's this rejection of anything beyond the face value, right? It's all like beauty is just that, and like that the material aesthetic is what you can see. But in traditional philosophy, so in Kant, again, even going all the way back to Plato and the Platonic forms, beauty is not merely what we can see, but also it's something more than that. There's something transcendent about it, is how it's described. And that's what they're being a little bit cagey about it, because I think they're still like this. The whole report feels like a little bit like they could have gone full trad in here pretty easily, but they've gone for kind of like quite a softly approach.
Yeah,
I think they're strong. I think they're strong on beauty, though. I mean, it's not. I don't think it shies away from beauty at all.
But what they're attempting to do, I'd say, what I think Scruton's attempting to do, he's trying to reconcile. When it comes to discussing this goes the same for politics, by the way, ladies and gents, if you are listening. When we discuss this about architecture, you can't brush over the past 50 years and say let's just go back to the start. You've got to reconcile with what has happened and try and come to some form of compromise, even if it is a bit heavily in a direction in a traditional direction, but it at least allude to it, and that's what I think he's doing to some extent in this report. But as well, I think
you sort of want a connection, don't you, between the past, like a building that just speaks of its own time. It's not, it's not.
Yeah, there was a period
between the past, present, and the future. I mean, I think T.S. Eliot wrote about
when we get to
connection between the past and the past and the now. That it's not which you see a lot of in like modern buildings. You see a lot of the time. It's like a building in a car park or in a like the famous tower block in the park sort of thing. It's got no connection with the past.
Yeah. So when we get to like modernism, it's when we get to modernism on the podcast, we'll discuss this quite a lot in depth for quite a few episodes. I think it'll be a long analysis of this. The idea that buildings are iterative. They take from like a classical composition. You take bits of other compositions, you put it into your composition. Yeah. And that's what was happening with buildings. And I guess this is what softened me from when we did Palladio recently. This is what softened me up a lot to Corbusier, because I realized that Corbusier is literally just doing what Palladio did especially in the Savoy. That's what he was doing, but he was doing it in contemporary materials. That's why it looked so crap. But
it's not a homely feel to that home, the Villa.
Yeah. It's because of the material. It's a material. I think it's purely a material thing, is why that building doesn't work. because
the
you can make that
philosophy
building
behind
crap
it as well.
easily.
It's the philosophy behind it as well, though. I think like the influence of, say, Adolf Loos's ornament is crime.
Oh,
That's
Adolf Loos was an arsehole.
I mean, that is the influence. That is
And then people
one of
go,
the tenets in it.
yeah, well, but then you talk about Van der Rohe then, and people go, oh, Van der Rohe didn't like ornament. And I was, of course he liked ornament. He made the whole entire building ornament. Like, you know, but he did it in such a subtle manner. Like, you know, he made it so the building focused entirely upon ornaments that he had created. The building revolved around it. But anyway, so discussing like what he's doing here and alluding to is that the building itself needs to connect into that lineage. A building has a lineage, an architecture has a lineage, and that connecting to it gives people that sense of familiarity. I have my own little philosophy that I think, you know, when this is probably what's been drilled into you, Ludwig, is that the idea that was it for it's function before form, isn't it? Or is it form
follows function?
Form follows function. That's the word. And
We
I think that's
really
wrong.
have that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that's totally wrong.
Well, there's interesting stuff there because it's like, well, what do you mean by function, and what's the function of a building? Because the guys who say that think that it's a machine for living in. You know, but what Scruton's saying here, a second, sorry guys, is that he's saying that a building, this is great. It turns anywhere into somewhere and nowhere into home, and that idea that the power of a building is not merely a machine for living in, but it's about just creating something. You know, something out of nothing. It's got like architecture has that unique ability to, you know, you can create a town out of a hill. You can create a home that generations of families could have lived in, and a space that has seen memories. So it's more than just four walls, if that makes sense. And that's, you know, I think this is quite a revolutionary paragraph against the status quo. You know.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah.
So, but I was going to say, like, you know, he said form follows function. My architecture philosophy, and something I did put in my final portfolio, by the way, which did ruffle a few feathers with certain people, is I put it pride in place. It said form plus purpose equals function. That the idea of function being an outcome rather than function being the subjective feeling of the person using the building. Because the idea that there's a purpose to a building and there's a form that purpose kind of manifests into. So a library, you have a certain idea of how a library is formed, and people have that idea, and you design to that form. Humans are creatures of habit. They would like to, like, you know, if you have a cathedral, you have a particular building in your mind, and you're going to imagine a big Gothic cathedral with a proper cross. You know, you're not going to imagine fucking Paddy's Wigwam in Liverpool, which is terrible. Well, it's not a cathedral. It's a fine building, but it's not a cathedral.
So I've got just to build upon this topic of beauty. You know, that wonderful passage that you highlighted, Ferro, in the report. There's a great passage. I'm just going to read out from Peter Zumthor's Thinking Architecture, which is the modernist approach I like to architecture. Anyway, is What it goes, when I come across a building that has developed a special presence in connection with the place it stands in, I sometimes feel that it is imbued with an inattention that refers to something over and above the place itself. It seems to be part of the essence of its place, and at the same time it speaks of the world as a whole. When an architectural design draws solely from tradition and only repeats the dictates of its site, I sense a lack of a genuine concern with the world and the emanations of contemporary life. If the work of architecture speaks only of contemporary trends and sophisticated visions without triggering vibrations in its place, this work is not anchored in its site, and I miss the specific gravity of the ground it stands on.
Yeah, there's that interesting idea of it's kind of here as well, that kind of vibration, the harmony between the place and those who settle there. And again, that's also interesting because the idea of the vernacular is something that has been wrecked by modernism. You know, we talked about in our last foundation stream about the Bath stone, and you can tell from a building that a building's in Bath from the stone that's quarried, and that's such a wonderful connection to the people who settle there. And the problem that modernism has is that you can have these international design agencies where someone from the US is building a block of apartments in Azerbaijan. That looks like it could be in New York, so that's an interesting part of beauty. It needs to have that harmony and connection to that place, and also resonate with the people as well. But in the interest of time, maybe we should go on to the next one, which is refusing ugliness. So
I just wanted to actually build on what you just said there, just quickly. I just wanted to say that luckily for me, I never experienced this, but I believe it is the case with a lot of architecture schools. Is say you'll be in Manchester and then you'll be asked to design a building in Sydney or Beijing or Cape Town or Buenos Aires, or do you know what I mean? So so that you can see how that encourages a certain globalist way of thinking.
Yeah, and again, I'm not necessarily against international architecture firms, and I think for the right project, it's good. But
you should visit the site, I think.
Yeah, you need to visit the site, and you need to know the people, and you need to know the land, and you need to know, again, part of plugging in to that piece there, part about understanding that harmony is about understanding what's gone before. And again, like you said, you'll have someone who's never visited the site. They'll be using the cheapest materials made in China, sent across halfway across the world. It just doesn't make any sense in my mind. But what we end up with is ugly buildings. Ugly buildings present a social cost that everyone is forced to bear. I love this. And again, that's what's interesting about architecture compared to other forms of art. A painting, I don't have to go and see a modernist painting for the rest of my life if I wanted to. I would just avoid the Tate Modern, I'd avoid contemporary galleries. But a building, you have to see every single day. And like you saw with that gigantic mall that that was replaced all those beautiful old factories that were there previously in the heart of your town, that ugly building is a social cost that everyone is forced to bear. Every single time someone walks by it, they have to see that ugly building, and they have to grieve at what they've lost and what's replaced it at the same time. They destroy the sense of place, undermining the spirit of the community, and ensure that we are not at home in our world. Ugliness means that buildings are unadaptable, unhealthy, and unsightly, which violates the context in which they are placed. Preventing ugliness should be a primary purpose of the planning system. One thing I didn't mention in above, again, is this connection with planning permission as well. And again, I really feel like our planning system is just so unbelievably messed up right now, where it's all geared towards these large, horrible estates from your Barratt Homes, etc. Guys like that can build 30 houses that all look the same and they all look crap. But it's really hard for if I was to do a self-build, for example, and hire Owain to be my architect,
it'd be a nightmare to get planning.
Yeah, I would never get through planning permission.
So I could talk to you about the planning permission side, because I literally just worked as a planner recently. Right. Building societies and housing associations get basically are exempt from planning permission. They can do whatever the hell they want, wherever they want, which is terrible because they build the cheapest and worst houses. B, never, and I thought this goes for everyone, never buy a house built by any of the big housing associations. Yes. They actually, in their contracts, have a right to tear down your house whenever they fancy. Because you don't own the land, you own the house. You don't own the land which is built on.
Interesting.
The idea is that they're going to tear them down after 30 years and rebuild them again and sell them off again. Yeah, it's a perpetual machine.
Plus, that's
it's MMT. It's all MMT gone mad.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's that forced redundancy that I was talking about again. People creating buildings in the short term. Was there something about short-termism as well? Maybe it's the next section.
So houses now are designed only to last 30 years.
Yeah,
if that. Most houses you see built by in the Blair government have fallen apart now. It's terrible, and the problem is it's a product of too much government. It's a product of pricing out people from building their own homes, even though materials are the cheapest they've ever been.
I mean, labour's expensive.
Labour's more expensive than it's ever been, but
you're right, and it's actually very cheap to build a house. It's just you would never get permission to do it. You know what I'm saying? For 150k, I could build a mansion.
Yes,
with like a pretty big sized house, but
it'd be timber frame. But yeah.
Well, no, not well. Anyway, I mean, we could chat about it later. But you can do something pretty nice.
It's
on that kind of budget. But the point is that all the kind of planning side and the land side is geared towards ugliness right now. It's geared towards pure utility and just this sort of ties into kind of Blairism in general, because I don't know if it was AA doing a video on it, or was it Adam? I think Adam Curtis in one of his. If you've seen the his latest documentary on the BBC, mentions around Blair's focus around box ticking. So, for example, in the NHS hospitals, people were like they wanted to get beds, so they had targets to hit beds. And so, what did people do? They basically removed the wheels from the kind of trolley, and then look, all of a sudden I've created a bed. So
it's a good documentary that.
Yeah, they've ticked the box, but what's happened is the quality of life for those people has massively decreased because they're not really in a bed; they're just in a trolley.
Well, this is the problem with centralisation in general.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with all of this planning stuff we're talking about now, where the government is set a task to build homes. So they say, okay, we need to build a ton of homes. How do we do it? Let's basically get planning permission for all of these horrific Barratt home estates. They don't care about the quality or the beauty or the beauty of it. They just care about ticking that box.
I will also note that planning is probably the most corrupt area of local government. It's backhanders galore, by the way.
Really?
It is terribly. And it's also, it's kind of a dictatorship to the point where a planner will refuse you planning permission, sometimes quite often on spite alone. Just because he'll ask you, what will happen is someone will say, like I won't tell you with the client or anything like that, but I had a certain building that he wanted a particular room for a particular game. He was quite a well-off. He had a poor boy gotten rich, and
you can't say a particular room. You got to give us a bit more.
Okay, a snooker room. You wanted a snooker room.
Oh, okay, fine, yeah.
And it's quite
a billiards room.
A billiards room is the word. Yes, yeah, a billiards room. And he wanted that, and it's quite a big space you need for a billiards room.
Yes, yeah.
And we submitted it to the planner, and the planner goes, "Why does he need that?" No, it's not a question of why does he need it. It fits on the bloody land, and it's in his house. It's not a question of why does he need it.
An Englishman's home, it's his castle.
If he wants it, he can have it.
That's it's interesting because there's a guy called Bernays.
Not affecting anyone.
Is the guy called Bernays who he's really
propaganda.
The propaganda guy, and he talks about the invisible dictators that we live our lives to, and that's a really great way of. I love what you said, Owen, about the planners being like just visible dictators. You know, it is just someone's opinion, and you can't challenge it beyond a certain point, can you? It just like stops at the local council level. So,
well, with me, planning would be entirely done by. I think parishes should be able to prevent for buildings from being even built. I think I honestly do. I believe that. I don't think there should be one single planner, one master planner over towns. That's why we got all the shit we have now. Pardon my language, but like it as well down my way of the part, and I imagine in Scotland this is a big issue. This is a big problem. Planning can be refused simply because you're English.
Oh shit! Really?
That does happen very often. So what happens sometimes is that an English person will send a Welsh person into the planning office to submit for them. So the planner thinks it's a Welsh person doing it. That does happen, and. So, because if you're moving, say, to an area of the Welsh countryside and you're an English person building a banker version, say, you're probably going to get refused if you come across a Welsh nationalist planner, which is quite common around these parts.
The savage Welsh nationalist.
Well, but the Welsh nationalist planners are some of the worst people in the world because they're terribly centralist. Like in my county right now, we have a terrible problem where all of our money is being spent on this crappy town called Llanelli. No offense to people from Lechi, but it's terrible. And
I just love it, the beef, the Welsh town beef there that's going on right there.
County, and it's an issue to the point where it's a planning issue. It is really badly. It is because they want to develop this one town, and they're moving all resources to try and make this town into basically their own little pet project. And they, regardless of any other small town like Llandyfri, Carmarthen, Llandailo, Whitland, St Clair's, they don't, which are all these towns in my county, they don't care about those. They're taking all their council tax and pumping it into this town that none of us go to because it's not even it's not connected to us really. It's just there because of a historical border, and because it's an industrial town, and this is the issue. That goes down to other issues though about how historical counties are probably no longer valid because of the Industrial Revolution, but.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, but it also shows just the power of planning. And again, this is why this document in some ways was so important, but will basically be ignored as well. That's the real black pill of the whole thing, is that...
oh, yeah, most certainly. Planners are also the dumbest people you'll ever meet.
Okay. I'm going to move on before we... I don't want to risk your entire future architectural career.
I just don't care. I don't mean that really. I think I'm just being a bit angry and flippant. I apologise.
Your face is going to be plastered on the planning departments across the country. Do not approve plans for this man.
Oh, who needs to approve plans when I own it?
Okay. Promote stewardship. Our built environment and our natural environment belong together. Both should be protected and enhanced for the long-term benefit of the communities that depend on them. Settlements should be renewed, regenerated, and cared for, and we should end the scandal of abandoned places where derelict buildings and vandalised public spaces drive people away. New developments should enhance the environment in which they occur, adding to the health, sustainability, and biodiversity of the context. What's interesting about this is that he's kind of leaning on very old school. Again, this is like 19th century conservative views on environmentalism. Again, I'm thinking about Carlyle and Ruskin here, who were very anti-industrialist, but they were very connected to nature itself. You know, Ruskin says, "Go to nature." That's like one of his little taglines. And it's interesting how Scruton's kind of pulling that naturalism back, which again, we've sort of lost it. I feel like in the last 40 years, we've lost it to crazy left-wingers who are obsessed with, just whatever, all the kinds of stuff, while a conservative naturalism is very much about, again, the harmony with the land and building things together with it, as opposed to
romantic streak to it as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That is definitely true. There is some romanticism. For example, the whole kind of idea of building follies, and people would build ruins at the ends of their gardens to create a more picturesque view. I love that idea of just like building a destroyed house just for that kind of more beautiful view. But I think again, part of the problem with a lot of modern buildings is this total disregard of nature itself. It's interesting. People often describe some modernist buildings as these kind of alien parasites that have come down, and I think that's a very fitting description. They're kind of like lice living off the environment.
Most certainly, it's the thing about a modernist building. They are purely utilitarian. There is nothing about them that is connected to the land they're in. And I personally did a fantastic speech on this. I think it was particularly the when it comes to housing estates and stuff like that, it was Mog when he did the it was after Grenfell happened, and he did his discussion. He did a speech about how nobody wanted these tower blocks. Nobody asked for these tower blocks. They were just built there. And the fact that you could have perfectly built a really nice set of terrace homes in that entire land where those tower blocks were, which would have housed all those people and then some, and they would have all had gardens, all had a parking space, and they would have had a far better quality of life. Even though they would have been small homes, yes, but they would have been better homes.
I think you mentioned on a stream with AA before, I think, Ferro, about the old houses, when they're not them down, and they built the
the tenement slums in Birmingham.
Was there some documentary, wasn't there, and about like the loss of community and things of that nature that came about when people got when those buildings got knocked down, and then they got moved into tower blocks. And then I think you made the point about it would have been cheaper just to renovated those existing buildings.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Actually, that is exactly what he's asking for here, isn't it? Like what we need to do is to understand, I think it's a good balance here between like a totally traditionalist, full reactionary position of saying we're going to keep them exactly as they are and they're never to change, but at the same time, we need a little bit of change at the right time. And again, say for example, giving planning permission to put central heating in a tenement would have made so much more sense. Yeah. But like I said, I swear since the 1950s, it's just been pure builder's grift, basically.
Yeah, I would just say like one of my big things is that I'm like restorationist. I'm like, I want I want every building since the 1950s torn down. I want it all restored. I want towns restored to what they were. I want Coventry torn down, rebuilt again to what it was. That post-war nonsense they built.
Yeah, I think it is really tricky because again, something like Coventry Cathedral, I think you just couldn't. There's almost no point in doing.
Yeah, not anymore.
In doing, but it's kind of like there's some really good points here around things like again the derelict buildings and the vandalized public spaces, and again this is a really great flanking action actually, identifying this is a point of weakness in the modernist planners' eyes, right? What they do is they create these spaces that are horrific that no one wants to go to. They get vandalized. Everyone starts moving out from them. They become derelict at the same time. What do you do with it? What the modernist planner does is he destroys it and then puts a mall or puts some other monstrosity in its place, only for it to happen again in 20 or 30. They're constantly kind of pushing the kind of kicking the can down the road.
So
Sorry.
So I was just going to say, from a design point of view, I was give a design perspective. I think Ludwig will be able to chime in a bit on this. Is that it's all done by theory and none of it's done by any practical evidence. My big thing is when I was at a crit, I would ask for like when someone say, "Oh, it's designed this way for this reason," but because of this theory, I was like, "What's your evidence that this theory will work?" Because the whole thing with the tenement block, that was theory. They thought that they could create communities in the sky.
Streets in the sky, yeah.
Yeah, and it didn't work, not at all. Big one recently was shared space. You remember the shared space theory? This idea that you can get rid of curbs and have people and cars walk together. Turns out that people naturally would move to the side and cars would walk there, and that's why we had curbs in the first bloody place. It's
to build on your point. I think that's just going back on the previous point about the streets in the sky. And that was one of the biggest errors with the modernist style Corbusian planning was, and Jane Jacobs wrote about this beautifully in The Life and Death of Great American Cities. It's basically the concept of the eyes on the street and how much that say when you think about I don't know, like an old Manhattan neighborhood in like Greenwich Village?
Greenwich Village.
Yeah, Greenwich Village. And then you had, like, say, you had apartments, but then you had the restaurants, you had shops, and then you had offices, and then, you had schools, and then you had, in the evening, restaurants would open and bars would open, and then there might be a nightclub as well. So throughout the day, there'd always be people on the street. Basically.
That's a safety thing, isn't it? It's good for keeping crime down.
It was a natural thing.
Yeah. And this is the thing about old high streets, is that high streets were a 24-hour thing in use. Now commuter villages are dead at night. These housing estates are unnatural to what people want to. It's an unnatural community. It's a community based purely on the fact that someone wants to live in a village, but they don't want to. But they want to work in a town, and they can, so they live in these faux villages.
And the Corbusian style massive tower block in parkland setting, you got like this vast space where nobody's looking onto it, and that just incentivizes crime.
Yep.
Because if no one's looking, then people are just more likely to commit crime.
Well, this is one of the big things about. I think when they talk about crime statistics, is what it probably emulates quite much is the movement of people out of city centres. People no longer lived like in the 60s through to the 80s. People moved from the city centres, and city centres became purely office and commercial. And the people who were left were the people too poor to leave. And those are the people who cause crime, and that is partly the reason why crime spiked in these areas, and these areas became so bad. Like look at parts of London. The ones who stayed became.
Do you live in town?
Me? No,
Yeah.
but I lived in the centre of Bristol for a while.
Exactly. That's what you're causing crime. That's what I'm trying to imply.
All right. Yeah. No, I'm in a nice little village. I like my village. My village, though, one day I want to write a book called The Death of a Village, because I've seen my village completely deteriorate over even the course of my lifetime, and it's depressing as hell.
Have you seen the film A Requiem for a Village?
Oh, don't. It'll upset me. Because I've seen my village go from having like a massive carnival, having a very big community spirit sort of thing, and this village school being populated with village children, to it becoming a commuter town, a village full of people who are you see people walking on the street now you don't even know. You know, you have the faux hello, how are you? Even though you don't know them, they don't go to the pub. They don't. There's no village shop anymore. That's gone, long gone now. The village carnival is a shell of its former self, even as is the recreation club, and the population of people who do things are getting older, and all the children of the village are gone, and it's just.
Well, I think what's interesting about that is that's as much about the people though as the. Do you know what I'm saying? But like, there was a time that if you moved to a location like that, you would try and get involved and become part of the community.
Oh no, it is partially that. It's partially the bloody stupid idea you see on Escape to the Country. These people say, "Oh, I want to be part of a community." No, you don't. You really don't, because you won't get engaged because you've never engaged in a community because you're born and bred in a suburb of London. I hate
it's
it.
Just Owain savaging Londoners there.
Oh no, any people from cities and they just don't understand it. They don't understand the necessity, and this is what I hate about having these cities govern countryside, because they don't understand how it works. They never understood how it worked.
I mean, it's attack on fox hunting for an example of like the
beside
and
fox hunting is controversial even in the countryside. I'd say that. Beside that, my big thing is primary schools and stuff like that. Seeing them die, and seeing so many of them die. And the reason they died is because city people didn't understand the idea that teachers would travel between primary schools over a course of a week. You'd have different they'd share different primary schools, and the same thing with small surgeries. Is that one surgeon, GP would go between 4 different surgeries and take surgeries in different places over the course of a week, and these surgeries would be tiny little houses or something like that. They wouldn't be big, but they'd be great for people, and they stay in their areas. And the same with the working, and with the internet and stuff. This should be something we can do again. Have people working from these small, tiny little like branches in villages that prevent this commuterization. It doesn't need to be like this anymore, and it needs to be an actual push for it in the in that in this direction again of trying to rebuild the village. I mean, that needs to require decentralization and an actual this stupid idea of centralizing everything in these mega hospitals, these mega schools. No, people don't function well in crowds. People are platoons, the Platonic society, and this is something that Scruton really loves. He writes about it in How to Be Conservative. Is that Platonic society, that the idea of Burke's society of platoons, and it is that. That's what humans are. They're like groups, but they're like small groups. They're like groups where you know everyone, and they're like in groups, and they don't and this is what villages are. This is what villages should be, and this is what towns were. Because did you have towns would be a collection of villages, cities would be a collection of towns. It's a hierarchy of place, and this is entirely gone because of this stupid idea of centralization, which came about in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, due to the war. Because that war mindset never went away. That what do you call it? That mobilization. There was never demobilization. For government never demobilized, and this is it.
Okay, I just want to cover these last little 8 points
Yeah, I got. Sorry for interrupting one more time, Farrah. I got to jump off now because I gotta be somewhere. So I do apologize, but it'll allow you to get on with it and free you from my rants.
Yeah, I can't stay beyond 9, but
Yeah.
hopefully we can just talk through these last points and then.
I'll see you for the last 2 points, and I'll be with you. I'll
Maybe, I don't know if it's worth doing this stream again. Maybe to actually go and dive into the report, because we spent nearly an hour and a half, and we've it's been a good conversation, but we haven't really.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation, but I think what I think we could have it. We could do a Scruton special on foundations.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea for the future. If I think Farrah's up for that as well.
Yeah, for sure. And you're obviously welcome.
Yeah.
Ludwig.
Yeah, I'll join in on that.
Yes, fantastic. So, are we going to do these last points, or do you want to finish up here?
Yeah. Let's use these last little points there, just so we can round out, because that's at least that's the first little beginning part of the chapter. Yeah. So basically, what they do is they took those 3 aims and then tried to map out into what is a framework, and basically to do those policy proposals in the following areas. And it's interesting again what they're going to pick up here. So planning, I mean, and this is really interesting. Create a predictable level playing field, because that's it. It's totally unpredictable and totally arbitrary, depending on the location and which cruel, tyrannical planning dictator you have. You should create like a little kind of like online planning department app, so you can see just how evil your local planning department is. Is there a way of doing that? Like finding out how many planning applications have been rejected by a region?
No, but there should be a little database actually. There should be like a kind of plan. What's it?
Planning.
Well, there is planning portals, but there should be like a page where you can say like, oh, this is a shit planning department.
It'd just be interesting. I'd love to see like who would like the top, because all planning permissions shared publicly as well, so everyone can see them.
Yes, you can see if planning is submitted. You can see it. It has to be shared publicly.
Yeah. So this is it. I'd love to do a stream where we just look through like the most evil bastard. Sorry for the language. Planning people, and then just see like what are the things they rejected. Basically, that'd be a great stream. Anyway, yeah. we'll have to have a think about that later. Okay, so planning communities. So again, this community is a funny word, because it's like you said, it's something that's often overused by both the people going into it and also the people kind of spinning the lies a little bit. But I really like stewardship, and I think that's something that has not been talked about. And again, this kind of like long-term responsibility. Yeah.
I'd just like to say as well about point 2, communities bring the democracy forward, that actually the most beautiful towns and cities in Europe were not built during the democratic era.
Yeah, well, this is Scruton's big fault, is that essentially he is still a liberal, in my opinion, and because he's going off Kantian philosophy, he will always end up just being like Owain and compromising it at some point, as opposed to the beautiful, uncompromised view of pure, unadulterated authoritarianism.
No, hold up. Right, okay. Cities and towns weren't developed by authoritarians either. They were developed by corporations. They had borough corporations which developed most of British towns. And the same.
Hold on a second though. But like in Bath though, who was the person that said, "I'm going to build these buildings"?
It's a rich guy.
It was one rich guy, and it was one architect that he hired to do it. That's it, exactly. It's not by committee. No one said, shall we do Bath? What does Bath look like? Let's have a little democratic vote on Bath. It was just 2 amazing people.
Yeah, but like many towns functioned. Like Venice was a corporation essentially. That's what the Doges were. That one, it was a semi-democratic corporation.
No, mate, they're an oligarchy based on 12 specific families.
I think this is a debate we need to have at some point, somewhere down the line.
I like it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let's continue at the point.
Regeneration, end the scandal of the left behind place. Again, I think this is we often talk about how do we deal with the left from the right's perspective. AA always talks about it, but I love this. This is actually an area that you can flank them so badly, because there's just so many parts of towns and cities. Like I went to Stoke, and it was one of the most depressing places I've ever been to in my life, because the buildings were just so bad and there was so much disrepair, and it's just this legacy caused by town planners.
I mean, it holds the same, to be honest. Outside of like the old town, there's not too dissimilar to that description.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Neighborhoods creates places, not just houses. Again, I think this all makes sense. And again, nature, and I think that's something that we should try and reclaim, is this idea of small c conservative naturalism. But again, it's not about like. I feel the truth behind that is not necessarily about sustainability, because I've seen some very sustainable architects, and they were like the worst kind of people.
Oh, they are the worst kind.
Yeah.
They're pretty. They're entirely self-aggrandizing.
They're really sniffing their own farts all day long in their architectural firm before they even speak to you. So
they'll have Greta Thunberg on their Facebook profile picture or something like that.
But the thing is, the idea of having a greener town in a conservative standpoint is having creating a more natural environment for people to live in, as in one which is healthier for you. You won't have as much. Pollution, is bad for your health, believe it or not, and having all these car fumes everywhere, it's not good. Smog, this is we want to create small communities where a child can play on the street and not have the threat of being run over by a car, or can climb a tree, or have a rope swing. This is the sort of, we want people to be able to do these things and play in nature, and this is the idea of having green towns, is that they can do that.
So Scruton, the report, there's a beautiful passage at the end of the report on page 139, and it goes, "Our proposals are detailed, some of them are tentative, but all of them reflect the aims of this commission. We seek to move planning from a culture of fear to a culture of affirmation. We are heirs to beautiful towns, set in incomparable countryside. Our goal should be to pass that heritage to our successors, not depleted but enhanced. That is what it means to build beautifully. As we have tried to show, beauty is not an arbitrary addition to the builder's aims, but fundamental to promoting health, well-being and sustainable growth. Beauty, as Stendhal wrote, is a promise of happiness. We hope that 50 years hence, more of our fellow citizens will be living with beauty, and that our labours will have played some small part in helping them do so. For if they are living with beauty, then they are to that extent enjoying good lives." So I thought that sort of
that's nice. Ludwig, I'm loving the amount of quotes you've got on here. Like a big quote cheat sheet somewhere.
I've got them written down on that.
That's great. Education, again, this is really interesting as well, promoting a wider understanding of placemaking. So, and again, I think one thing I like to think that Foundations does, and hopefully, this new YouTube channel is about educating people, because again, not enough people know about aesthetics or about buildings and architecture, and there's so much ignorance, isn't there, by just the guy on the street? Wouldn't you say, Owen?
Yes, definitely.
And then
outside of your channel, I think it's a good area for the right to look on, because especially the online right, because outside of Foundations podcast, there's not many people covering architecture, from
it's like lecturers basically. So it's lecturers doing stuff for architecture students and stuff. So and then finally, management, value planning, count happiness, procure properly, and then they create this quite nice little. I quite like this little framework thing across there.
Yeah, it's nice. I like the one. I think they did one as well, just a few pages after that as well. Is it?
Oh yeah, and they go into what we've done. But I thought that's maybe a nice time to close, because Owen's got to head off. But we should definitely have a deeper look at the report in the future sometime.
Almost certainly.
But I don't know if you wanted to end up with anything, Ludwig, in terms of things we've covered off today.
Just go to, I think, page 10, really, just to cover it off. Is it? Sorry, on the report itself, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that little framework there, I think it's a good one. Just in the centre, it's got beautiful buildings. It says windows, materials, proportion, space, and then the second outer ring, it says beautiful places, streets, squares, and parks, the spirit of place. And then the third outer ring, it's got beautifully placed, sustainable settlement patterns sitting in the landscape. So, yeah, that's about it, really.
Cool. So, Ludwig, if you want to say anything more about this kind of channel and what you're planning to kind of talk about, are you going to do some more kind of solo streams and stuff like that at some point, or?
Yeah, hopefully do some streams and that, and then also do some like videos as well on just architecture, really. Some maybe cover a bit of like politics and culture as well. But I'm still in that phase of like, I don't know. It's definitely going to cover architecture, so. But
cool.
Yeah, still developing it, really.
Great. Well, is there any other final words before we head off?
Thanks for joining us tonight on the stream, guys. Yeah, I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Yep, no worries at all, and thanks for having us.
Yeah,
and again, it's always interesting, and I think from my perspective, Scruton just added so much, and I think he's going to be one of those characters that is going to be like an really thought about in the next kind of couple of years. I think a lot of people missed him at the time, but in his posterity, his name and his works will live on. And I for one will be going to be going through this report in a little bit more detail after this as well. So check it out.
Good. Thank you for having us. And I think we'll go through this. And I would have discussed Charles as well in the future. Maybe that'd be good as well, because he has a lot of influence on this sort of report.
Prince Charles. Just to be clear.
Yes. Okay. Good.
Yeah, that would be a good one.
Yeah. There we are. Sure.
Great. Do you want to close this out, Ludwig?
Yeah.